Chapter 27.
Jacob steals Esau's blessing. One day when Isaac was old and turning blind, he called for Esau, his older son, and said, "My son." "Yes, father," Esau replied. "I am an old man now," Isaac said, "and I don't know when I may die. Take your bow and a quiver full of arrows, and go out into the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare my favorite dish and bring it here for me to eat. Then I will pronounce the blessing that belongs to you, my firstborn son, before I die." But Rebekah overheard what Isaac had said to his son Esau. So when Esau left to hunt for the wild game, she said to her son Jacob, "Listen, I overheard your father say to Esau, 'Bring me some wild game and prepare me a delicious meal. Then I will bless you in the Lord's presence before I die. Now, my son, listen to me. Do exactly as I tell you. Go out to the flocks and bring me 2 fine young goats. I'll use them to prepare your father's favorite dish. Then take the food to your father so he can eat it and bless you before he dies.' But look," Jacob replied to Rebekah, "my brother Esau is a hairy man, and my skin is smooth. What if my father touches me? He'll see that I'm trying to trick him, and then he'll curse me instead of blessing me." But his mother replied, "Then let the curse fall on me, my son. Just do what I tell you. Go out and get the goats for me." So Jacob went out and got the young goats for his mother. Rebekah took them and prepared a delicious meal, just the way Isaac liked it. Then she took Esau's favorite clothes, which were there in the house, and gave them to her younger son Jacob. She covered his arms and the smooth part of his neck with the skin of the young goats. Then she gave Jacob the delicious meal, including freshly baked bread. So Jacob took the food to his father. "My father?" he said. "Yes, my son," Isaac answered. "Who are you, Esau or Jacob?" Jacob replied, "It's Esau, your firstborn son. I've done as you told me. Here is the wild game. Now sit up and eat it, so you can give me your blessing." Isaac asked, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" "The Lord, your God, put it in my path," Jacob replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come closer so I can touch you and make sure that you really are Esau." So Jacob went closer to his father, and Isaac touched him. "The voice is Jacob's, but the hands are Esau's," Isaac said. But he did not recognize Jacob because Jacob's hands felt hairy, just like Esau's. So Isaac prepared to bless Jacob. "But are you really my son Esau?" he asked. "Yes, I am," Jacob replied. Then Isaac said, "Now, my son, bring me the wild game. Let me eat it, and then I will give you my blessing." So Jacob took the food to his father, and Isaac ate it. He also drank the wine that Jacob served him. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come a little closer and kiss me, my son." So Jacob went over and kissed him. And when Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he was finally convinced, and he blessed his son. He said, "The smell of my son is like the smell of the outdoors, which the Lord has blessed. From the dew of heaven and the richness of the earth, may God always give you abundant harvests of grain and bountiful new wine. May many nations become your servants, and may they bow down to you. May you be the master over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. All who curse you will be cursed, and all who bless you will be blessed." As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, and almost before Jacob had left his father, Esau returned from his hunt. Esau prepared a delicious meal and brought it to his father. Then he said, "Sit up, my father, and eat my wild game, so you can give me your blessing." But Isaac asked him, "Who are you?" Esau replied, "It's your son, your firstborn son Esau." Isaac began to tremble uncontrollably and said, "Then who just served me wild game? I have already eaten it, and I blessed him just before you came, and yes, that blessing must stand." When Esau heard his father's words, he let out a loud and bitter cry. "Oh, my father, what about me? Bless me too," he begged. But Isaac said, "Your brother was here, and he tricked me. He has taken away your blessing." Esau exclaimed, "No wonder his name is Jacob, for now he has cheated me twice. First he took my rights as the firstborn, and now he has stolen my blessing. Oh, haven't you saved even one blessing for me?" Isaac said to Esau, I have made Jacob your master, and have declared that all his brothers will be his servants. I have guaranteed him an abundance of grain and wine, what is left for me to give you, my son." Esau pleaded, "But do you have only one blessing? Oh, my father, bless me too." Then Esau broke down and wept. Finally, his father Isaac said to him, "You will live away from the richness of the earth, and away from the dew of the heaven above. You will live by your sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you decide to break free, you will shake his yoke from your neck." Jacob flees to Padan-Aram. From that time on, Esau hated Jacob because their father had given Jacob the blessing. And Esau began to scheme, "I will soon be mourning my father's death. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." But Rebekah heard about Esau's plans, so she sent for Jacob and told him, "Listen, Esau is consoling himself by plotting to kill you. So listen carefully, my son. Get ready and flee to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay there with him until your brother cools off. When he calms down and forgets what you have done to him, I will send for you to come back. Why should I lose both of you in one day?" Then Rebekah said to Isaac, "I'm sick and tired of these local Hittite women. I would rather die than see Jacob marry one of them."
So it says, Genesis 27, that was. Okay. Read the notes. Genesis chapter 27, notes to Genesis 27, verse 5, verse 10. When Rebekah learned that Isaac was preparing to bless Esau, she quickly devised a plan to trick him into blessing Jacob instead. Although God had already told her that Jacob would become the family leader in Genesis 25, verse 23, Rebekah took matters into her own hands. She restored doing something wrong to trying to bring about what God had already said would happen. For Rebekah, the end justified the means. But no matter how good we think our goals are, we should not attempt to achieve them by doing what is wrong. Will God approve of the methods you are using to accomplish your goals? What is it, Genesis? It's 25, verse 23. In Genesis 25, verse 23, the Lord tells Rebekah that two nations will come from her womb and that the nations will be rivals from the beginning. And the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." Mary, Genesis 25, verse 19, verse 28 describes the birth of Isaac and Rebekah's twin boys. After marrying, when Isaac is 40, Rebekah does not become pregnant for 20 years, and only in response to Isaac's prayer to the Lord. Her pregnancy is so difficult that she approaches the Lord to ask why. His response is a prophecy about the divided nations that will come from her. That makes more sense when two children are born, one red and hairy, and the other grabbing his brother's heel. So like Isaiah, Jesus. The first is named Israel. The Israel. And the other one is Jacob. Esau, who becomes a hunter loved by his father, and the second Jacob is a quiet stay-at-home man favored by his mother. So I'm quiet. So was it's still not answering my question. It's freaking confusing. So, Genesis chapter 27, verse 11, 13. Jacob hesitant when he heard Rebekah's deceitful plan, although he questioned it for wrong reasons. Fear of getting caught, he protested and thus gave her one last chance to reconsider. But Rebekah had become so wrapped up in her plan that she no longer saw clearly what she was doing. Sin had trapped her and was degrading her character. Correcting her yourself in the middle of doing wrong may bring her this disappointment, but it also will bring freedom from sin's control. In Genesis chapter 27, verse 11, 12, how we react to a moral dilemma often expresses our real motives. Frequently, we are more worried about getting caught than doing what is right. Jacob did not seem concerned about the deceitfulness of his mother's plan. Instead, he was afraid of getting in. Trouble while carrying it out. If you're worried about getting caught, you're probably in a position that is less than honest. Let your fear getting caught by wanting to do right. Jacob paid a huge price for carrying out his son's plan. In Genesis chapter 27, verse 19, although Jacob got the blessing he wanted, deceiving his father ended up costing him dearly. These are some of the consequences of deceit. He was installed from his family for years and never saw his mother again. His brother wanted to kill him, and he was deceived by his uncle Laban. His family became torn by strife. Esau became the founder of an enemy nation. Ironically, Jacob would have received the birthright and blessing anyway. Imagine how different his life would have been had he and his mother waited for God to work his way in his time. In Genesis chapter 27, verse 37, before a father died, he performed a ceremony of blessing in which he officially handed over the birthright to the rightful heir. Although the firstborn son was entitled to the birthright, it was not actually his until the blessing was pronounced. Before the blessing was given, the father could take the birthright away from the older son and give it to a more deserving son. But after the blessing was given, the birthright could no longer be taken away. This is why the fathers usually waited until late in life to pronounce the blessing. Although Jacob had been given the birthright by his father, by his older brother years before, In Genesis chapter 25, verse 27, verse 34, he still needed his father's blessing to make it binding. In Genesis 27, verse 33, in ancient times, a person's word was binding, much like a written contract today, especially when it was a formal oath. And this is why Isaac's blessing was irrevocable. In Genesis chapter 27, verse 41, Esau was so angry at Jacob for getting their father's blessing through deception that he failed to see his own wrong in giving away his birthright in the first place. Jealous anger blinds us from seeing our own faults. Take more eventually of your life. And as if a poor decision, mistake, or sin is the real reason you're harboring jealous anger towards someone. In Genesis chapter 27, verse 41, when Esau lost a valuable family blessing, his future suddenly changed. Reacting in anger, he decided to kill Jacob. And when you lose something of great value, or if others conspire against you and succeed, anger is the first and most natural reaction. But you control your feelings by, number one, recognizing your reaction for what it is. And number two, praying for strength, and three, asking God for help to see the opportunities that even your bad situation may provide. Oh, man. I don't know. Jacob's heel recommends curse. I'm confused. Genesis 27. In the book of Genesis, chapter 27, Genesis. Ouch. Oh my goodness. 27 stories told of Jacob deceiving his father Isaac in order to receive the birthright blessing intended for his older twin brother Esau. As Jacob received the blessing, the text mentions that he was grasping Esau's heel, Genesis 27, verse 16. Some biblical scholars have drawn a connection between this imagery of Jacob grasping his brother's heel and the later Messianic prophecies about the seed of the woman who would bruise the serpent's head, Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. This has been interpreted by some as a foreshadowing or type of Christ who, as the Messiah, would automatically trump over the work of the devil. However, the connection between Jacob's heel and Jesus is not explicitly made in the biblical text itself. It is more of a typological or semantic interpretation made by some Christian teachers and theologians based on a broader narrative, but the Bible does not directly state that Jacob's heels grabbing was a recommended or prophetic representation of Christ. It is an inference drawn by some based on the broader biblical story and themes. Does that help explain the potential connection you were asking about? So Jacob sounds like the Hebrew word for heel and deceiver. Hebrew El Shadi. Genesis 27, the importance of honesty and integrity. We shall learn. The story shows how Jacob deceived his father Isaac in order to receive the birthright blessing meant for his brother Esau. This led to many conflicts and difficulties later on. The consequences of favorism, Isaac clearly favored Esau over Jacob, which created tension and rivalry between the brothers, showing partisanship can have damaging effects in families. The sovereignty of God's plan. Despite the deception, God's plan for Jacob to receive the blessing automatically prevailed. This demonstrates that God's purposes will be fulfilled even when people try to circumvent them. The complexity of family relationships. The story portrays the complex dynamics between parents and children, as well as between siblings. It shows how sin and selfishness can strain these important bonds. And then the need for forgiveness and reconciliation. Though the brothers were estranged for a time, they were eventually able to reconcile later in life. This points to the importance of forgiving people, and mending broken relationships. Overall, Genesis 27 offers insights into themes of honesty, family, divine providence, and the human capacity for both good and evil. It serves as a sobering example of the consequences of deception, while you also highlighting God's ability to work through imperfect people. I don't know what the middle note's showing. I'm not understanding why it was deceitful if it was God's plan. That's a great question. The story of Jacob's deception of Isaac to receive the birthright blessing is complex, as you point out, because it was ultimately part of God's sovereign plan. God had already revealed to Rebekah before the twins were born that the older son Esau would serve the younger Jacob in Genesis chapter 25 verse 23. This was God's predetermined plan. However, Jacob and Rebekah took matters into their own hands rather than waiting on God's timing and methods. Their deception while achieving the desired outcome was still morally wrong. God is able to work through imperfect human beings' actions and decisions to accomplish his purposes, but that doesn't excuse the sinful behavior itself. The ends don't justify the means. And Jacob and Rebekah's actions led to strained family relationships and consequences they had to deal with later on. Deception always has a cost, even if God is able to use it. So in summary, while God's arching plan was being fulfilled, the specific means used by Jacob and Rebekah were still morally questionable. The story highlights how God can work through flawed humans, but also the importance of trusting in God's timing and methods rather than taking matters into our own hands through deception. It's a complex but important lesson about divine sovereignty and human responsibilities. Isaiah 46:14. Verse 14 have to do with Genesis 27. You raised a good point. Isaiah 45:14 is from a completely different book of the Bible than Genesis 27, so at first glance it may not seem directly related. However, a few portional connections we can make between these two passages both speak to God's sovereignty and control over the affairs of nations and individuals. In Genesis chapter 27, we see God's plan for Jacob to receive the blessing ultimately comes to pass despite the human deception. Similarly, Isaiah 45 affirms God's power to direct the course of history. The theme of God working through imperfect people is present in both passages. Jacob's deceit was sinful, yet God used it to fulfill his purposes. Likewise, Isaiah 45 speaks of God using a pagan king like Cyrus to accomplish his will. There may be a broader biblical theological connection in how these passages speak to God's plan of redemption unfolding through human history. The birthright blessings given to Jacob sets in motion the language leading to the Messiah, just as God's use of Cyrus foreshadows his greater plan of salvation. So while the two passages are not directly linked in the same narrative, they do share some thematic overlap in terms of divine sovereignty. God uses flawed individuals in the outworking of God's redemption purposes. Examining how different scriptural passages relate to and inform one another is part of the richness of studying the Bible as a whole. Does this help explain a potential connection, even if the two passages are from different books? Let me know if you have any other questions. It's a long read. Genesis chapter 27, verse 41. Esau was so angry at Jacob for getting a father's blessing through deception that he failed to see his own wrong in giving away his birthright. In the first place, jealous anger blinds us from seeing our own faults. Take a more eventually of your life and ask if a poor decision, mistake, or sin is the real reason you're harboring jealous anger towards someone else.